Hello everyone, my name is Svitlana Demchenko and I'm very happy to be back to PowerPlayChess. I am a women's international master from Canada and I'm here to cover some games from the Women's Candidates Tournament taking place right now in Cyprus. We saw a fairly calm round one with all the games ending in draws. Not very surprising because the field is very close in strength, but I'm sure we'll see a lot of fighting chess ahead. Today we'll see one of the most exciting games of round 2, which featured an all-Indian clash between Divya Deshmukh as white and Vaishali Rameshbabu as black. Their head-to-head score coming into this game was 2 wins for Divya and 2 draws in classical chess. The game began with c4. This was Vishyanan who was making that first ceremonial move, which was a very nice moment because Divya also made the same move in the real game. Vaishali responded with e6. And after that, we got knight c3, d5, d4, more like a queen's gambit structure, and now h6. This looks very strange at first, but it actually is a very solid move, and it is preventing white's main plan with bishop to g5. The most common move here is to just play knight f6, to which white often responds with capture, capture, and bishop to g5. These are very typical structures, have been played thousands of times, but Vaishali does this interesting h6 move to avoid this. I love this line myself, actually. It used to surprise a lot of people, but it's getting more popular. I don't know if that's fortunately or unfortunately. But Vaishali has played this line twice before in her career, which is not a lot, but she won both of these games. But it was not her main repertoire, so I don't think it was expected, and Divya took a few minutes to think here. She responded with takes, takes, and bishop to f4. Logically, white puts the bishop to f4 instead of g5 now that it cannot go there. And we get a very classic Carlsbad pawn structure here. Usually, white's plans are to go for a minority attack on the queen side. You could also go for a central advance with something like this, but the plans vary and black basically responds to whichever plan white chooses. Now Vaishali offers a trade of bishops, which is accepted with takes, takes, and bishop to d3. So both white and black have a very solid position, not very many weaknesses, and the idea is to play a long middle game. Black goes knight e7. The idea is to play either knight f5 or probably bishop to f5 to trade them off. White prevents that with their queen. And here, one of the other main moves is to play queen f6 to pursue a very big trade after bishop to f5. But she decided to keep it more complicated without all these trades and castle. Now they both just keep their development going with white castling, black's knight coming in, and now the usual plan for white is to go with the knight to e5, but Divya did something a bit different and interesting with her knights in this game instead. We'll see it very shortly. And first, just h3. Now, black shouldn't do anything too drastic, so she just tries to improve her position with g6. The rook comes in, a5 is a useful move, and now the knight comes to a4, so aiming for either b6 or c5. Now finally the bishop came out like this, offering the trade, and so far all the top moves have been played by both players, very well played, and no mistakes have been made. So the queen defends the pawn, a rook comes in, so rather a slow middle game so far. But this trade is offered, and Divya decides to keep more pieces on the board, which actually made the game more interesting. But the usual plan that we've talked about before is to go for this minority attack on the queen side, which was possible to do, something like this. And honestly, this might have given white a slight advantage, especially if black takes and we take back with this pawn. Maybe she thought she didn't have to do that, and changed the pawn structure like this and decided to keep a more familiar one, but would give a slight edge to white because of this weakened pawn, but still nothing too big. Instead, though, she decided to retreat with the knight, and you'll see that knight goes to a complete repositioning all the way to e2 and then to f4. Maybe you thought the knight was done, but not yet, because the knight ended up all the way on d3, which was quite funny that it went all the way like that just to get to d3. But finally, it stays there. Here, the position so far is roughly equal, but the interesting part starts now. Finally, there's some changes in the pawn structure when Divya goes b4. This is the typical plan that she was going for all along, and so far, Black keeps it flexible and just plays knight to d6. The important thing about this is the trade, of course. If it happens, then we get a solid position with mutual weaknesses, White's weakness on a2 and Black's weakness on b7, and both players will just attack them back and forth. The important thing is to not allow just b5 for free, because that would improve the structure for White. So instead, this knight comes here and prevents b5 for now. So a4 and queen e7 follows. Now b5 is not very good for White, because they're actually forced to take back with the pawn, which is really not the same, and Black will be the one who will take over the initiative. So instead, this trade happens, and we've talked about these mutual weaknesses already with these two pawns, and the game would just went on like this, with the rooks getting into position, White's rook on the b file, Black's rook's on the a file. So they're both just standing there for now. And although it's equal, I would say that White is sort of the one pressing, just because of the piece placement, and the pieces are just getting a little bit more active, but still nothing happening for now. And it's always fun to see how in the middle game they try to provoke one another to make a mistake, which inevitably, when the time gets low, tends to happen. There were a few repetitions that happened as we got closer to move 40. So they did repeat, and then Divya decided to keep the game going with the trade and putting the other knight to c5. Now both players are on 2 minutes, and we have our first mistake happening. Vaishali goes knight to e4. And this is a mistake for a very complicated tactical reason, which we'll actually get to see play out in the game. So just a few things to think about. If the knight gets taken like this, which is probably what she calculated, then we have an even trade, both pawns are gone, and it ends up being equal in the end. If the knight takes here, then once again the rook takes this pawn, which was the whole idea for this knight, to trade this one off. But Divya finds the right response here. Rook takes b7. Turns out that this is just a free pawn for White with correct play, and Black is forced to defend this very, very unpleasant position. Now there's also a threat on f7. It's sometimes calm middle games can turn around very, very quickly. So, of course, taking the knight here is not an option because of this. So instead, knight to g5. And here, there's only one winning move. The queen is attacked, so definitely it has to move. And the move is queen to g4. This would have been great. It attacks the queen and doesn't give Black the time to respond. Avoiding the trade only makes things worse after h4, so Black likely has to go for this trade. And if we take, the knight has to move. And if we look at this ending, White is up a pawn, but importantly, they will have two passers. So after they play something like f3 in the future, one of them will be the central passer, another one on a4. It's looking really good. It is winning Endgame for white. Still some work to be done, but most likely Divya would have won this had she found this queen g4 move. Instead, she played queen g3, which misses that chance, but it's because of a very, very subtle idea, which actually happened in the game. We will get to see it, but it's very cool that the players actually, that Vaishali actually found this on such little time on the clock. So first of all, the beginning of that idea is rook to c5, which itself is very nice. We're removing the defender from that rook, and if white takes, then definitely we will take that rook and be up a piece, which is great. But the whole idea of Divya's queen g3 move was to give an intermediate check. The king moves away, rook is still under attack, so she plays an in-between move, keeping both the rook and the queen under attack. But black says, I actually have one of those intermediate moves too, and plays a check. Now the king goes up, and this was the decisive moment in the game. Black has only one way out, and maybe I'll give you a few seconds to look for it. I don't know if having a tea break is still a thing on this channel, but if so, then I'll have my tea break while you think of the best move for black. And you can pause the video, you can just keep watching. It is queen takes h3. So really wonderful queen sacrifice. Not very often we see something like that happen, but the idea is this really nice royal fork. And this ended up being forced, so there was no option but to go for it. And the important thing is that that queen sacrifice was actually winning a pawn in the process too. So black just regained the pawn. And the endgame is pretty even, and it ended in a draw by agreement right here. So honestly, you could continue this ending with something like maybe white playing this and black playing this, but it is pretty even with each side having a passer, so they decided to just call it a day after such a quick turnaround in the middle game. That is it for the game. It was a draw, but a very nice one, in my opinion. And the rest of the games for round 2 also ended in draws, but the tension is building up because now that nobody has won yet, it will be very huge when somebody gets a decisive result, and I think that will be pretty soon. And even though there have been draws, as you can see, they have been very, very exciting games. So let's see who will be the first to strike. I hope you enjoyed this recap, and I'll see you in the future rounds.